Okay, so let's dive right into one of history's most fascinating and notorious cold cases. The suspect? A king. And the mystery? Well, it's a lie that's lasted for over 500 years. You've probably heard these words before. Deformed, unfinished, scarce half made up. With just a few lines, Shakespeare basically cemented the image of Richard III in our collective minds. The monstrous, hunchbacked tyrant. This is the ultimate villain we think we know. And for centuries, that's exactly what people believed. It wasn't just a story, it was treated as historical fact. This idea that his, twisted body had to mean he had a twisted mind. I mean, talk about a powerful and lasting piece of character assassination. If you look at his actual time in power, it was a real flash in the pan. We're talking just over 2 years. But wow, was it chaotic. It was super controversial, and it all ends violently on a battlefield. It's like the perfect recipe for creating a legendary villain, right? But here's the thing. What if that whole story, the one we've all been told, what if it's a lie? What if this historical case closed was anything but? And then something absolutely incredible happens. We jump forward to 2012. A team of archaeologists in Leicester, England are digging under, get this, a parking lot. And they find him. They find the king. Suddenly, this 500-year-old cold case is blown wide open with the one piece of evidence no one thought we'd ever see, the body itself. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to follow the evidence, just like detectives. And for a first clue, we're putting the legend itself under the microscope of 21st century science. And look at this. This just lays it all out, doesn't it? The legend versus the science. The forensic team went to work, and they just took that old caricature apart, piece by piece. That famous withered arm Shakespeare wrote about? Nope. The malformed legs? Not there. A severe limp? The bones say otherwise. They were all literally fabrications. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean he was perfectly fine. The science shows he did have a serious spinal condition called scoliosis. It's a side-to-side curve, which would have made one of his shoulders higher than the other. But, and this is the key, he was not a hunchback. That's a completely different condition, kyphosis. Calling him a hunchback wasn't just a mistake, it was a deliberate, calculated exaggeration to make him seem monstrous. So, this just begs the question, right? If they lied so obviously, so blatantly about his physical appearance, why on earth should we just blindly trust anything else they said about him? About his character, his actions? To figure that out, we have to do what any good investigator does. Look for the motive. Who wrote this story? And even more important, why did they write it that way? And here's the motive laid bare. The guy who beat Richard, Henry Tudor, had a pretty shaky claim to the throne himself. He basically took it by force. So to make his own rules seem legit and to hold on to power, he had to make Richard look like the worst person imaginable. Turning Richard into a monster wasn't just good PR, it was a political necessity, a survival strategy. Okay, so we've got a motive. Now let's go back to the scene of the crime, so to speak. Let's look at the main charge against him, that he was a usurper. Did he just waltz in and steal the crown? Well, the Tudor version of the story is that it was a simple, brutal power grab. But when you look at the evidence from the time, a totally different picture emerges. It looks a lot more like a legal process. See, a bishop comes forward and reveals that the old king had a secret marriage contract before he married the queen. And in those days, that was a huge deal. It meant his kids, including the new boy king, were technically illegitimate. So what happens? Parliament gets involved, and they actually petition Richard to take the throne. This wasn't some shady coup in the shadows, it was done through an act of parliament. But okay, even if we can explain the crown, there's still the darkest cloud hanging over Richard's name. The thing that really sealed the deal on his evil reputation. What happened to his nephews, the famous princes in the tower? I mean, people have been arguing about this for 5 centuries with zero definitive proof. The trail went completely cold, until now. Just recently, researchers digging in the UK's National Archives found something, well, something extraordinary. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a line from a will from 1516. It's leaving someone a chain that belonged to young King Edward V. The young king, one of the missing princes. And get this, the will belongs to a relative of Sir James Tyrrell, the very guy the Tudors blamed for the murders. So you have a personal belonging of a supposedly murdered prince showing up in the family of the main suspect 33 years after he disappeared. Now, does this solve the case? No, but it's an absolutely tantalizing new clue in this ancient mystery.
And let's go back to the bones for one last brutal clue. 11. That's the number. He had 11 distinct injuries inflicted around the time of his death at the Battle of Bosworth Field. And 9 of them, 9, were to his head. His death wasn't just a casualty of war, it was violent, it was personal, and you can bet the victors made a spectacle of it. It all fed into the villain narrative they were so carefully building.
So where does this all leave us? Look, we're not trying to say Richard was a saint or some kind of misunderstood hero. But when you put all the evidence together, the forensics, the legal documents, these new archival finds, it's impossible to ignore the conclusion. The simple, black and white story of a monstrous villain, it's just not true. It's deeply flawed. That caricature was a lie. Ultimately, the whole story of Richard III is just this incredible reminder that history really is written by the victors. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other stories that we just accept as fact are built on the same kind of shaky ground? What we've seen here is how modern science, a little bit of luck, and just some good old-fashioned detective work can start to unravel a lie that's lasted for 500 years, one piece of evidence, one bone at a time.